Hello and welcome to Your Schools. I'm Lynne Turner Fitzgerald and I'm joined by Calli Nicholson with the Indian Education Department. I almost messed up your name, sorry. Calli Nicholson, she's the Director of Indian Education for School District 2. I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You are one of the busiest people I think I've ever run into.
Oh no, not at all. Everybody's busy.
But didn't you have a lot of out-of-building events recently?
Yeah, we have cultural enrichment presentations at all the elementary schools. So with 22 elementary schools, we were setting up teepees in September and October, and that was very busy. Right now we've transitioned to more of a veterans and giveaway cultural presentation. So luckily we're not packing the teepee, but we are packing just each other, I guess, and technology to provide those presentations.
Right.
This year it's for 4th and 5th grade students, but in the future we'll expand to more grades in the elementaries.
Oh, okay. So what would a typical presentation look like?
It's about a 20-30 minute presentation. This particular round is presenting on how the significance of all veterans, all warriors, and specifically Indigenous veterans, their contribution, how to honor a veteran, why it's important. And it's really interesting to see how many of our students have a veteran in the family. And so it's just a great honoring for recognizing our all warriors, all veterans, especially our Indigenous veterans.
All right, that's good, that's important.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about you a little bit, Calli. Is that okay?
Yeah, it is.
How long have you been in this position?
This is my second year in this position as Director of Indian Education.
And prior to that?
I've been in the district since 2006. So I've been a teacher, an instructional coach. I've worked primarily in the elementary, but had the experience of coaching lots of different grade levels.
Wow.
Yeah.
What brought you to teaching?
Well, I'm actually a third generation teacher. My mom
That usually does it, doesn't
my
it?
mom and grandma are teachers, Indigenous women teachers, so that's a great connection.
Sort of in the blood and
Yep.
in the house.
Yep.
Growing up. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you are not a Billings native, though?
No, I'm originally from Wolf Point, Montana.
Okay. And then did you educate here in the state?
Yes, I did. I went to Rocky Mountain College and ended up just staying here, me and my husband, and staying.
Oh, you love that
Yeah.
campus. That's a great school.
Yes, it is. It is beautiful.
Yeah. So prior to the interview, I was asking you about the duration of the program, and it's been around for a number of years. Has it changed?
It's changed, especially with the number of personnel that we have.
Oh.
Back when I first started teaching in 2006, Everett Fox was the director, and it was just him and a couple of Title VI staff. We work under a Title VI grant as well as some other funding opportunities. And at that time, Indian Education for All had just received state funding. It's been in our Constitution since 1972, but it did not really get rolling until it was funded at the state level. And so then after that, he was able to hire an Indian Ed for All coach, and it's just continued to grow to the program it is today with our Indian Education home to school coordinators and our Indian Education for All coaches. So it's really grown quite a bit.
Well, I want to ask you about some of the classroom activities for all students. Are there components of Indian education in all classes?
With Montana state law, Indian Education for All, it is designed to be infused into every classroom and to educate all Montanans about the unique cultural heritage of our Indigenous peoples. Some avenues of classrooms it's a little bit easier to infuse than others, but the idea with Indian Ed for All, or IFA, is to not necessarily add something to a teacher's plate because it's already overflowing as it is.
Sure, yeah.
But to, years ago, Denise Juneau talked about it's to season the plate, to provide the lessons that we have, the multiple perspectives, looking at the Indigenous peoples that were here first, what lessons can we bring to the table?
Right, and how is it woven into the fabric today of what we live? So we have flags here. I borrowed those from your office, thank you. Are these all Montana tribes?
Yep, these are our Montana tribal groups, yep.
Okay.
And I believe we even have Little Shell here too, so
There are 8.
Yeah, so our most recent federally recognized, state recognized tribal group, Little Shell.
Well, so do you go in depth in terms of the differences between the various tribes?
It depends on the age group of the students. So in kindergarten, it might be just recognizing unique cultural heritage and how we're all different and how we're all community, we all belong here. They also might get a little bit into the significance of long hair, especially for our boys. Excuse me, and talking about, again, just how we're all different. We have different things to bring to the table, and we all belong. As they get older into about third grade, we start looking at the names of the reservations, the names of the tribal groups, and then it just continues to grow to the point of high school, where they might get into lessons talking about more cultural movements across the state. You know, is there something, a civic issue that could be addressed? Is there different laws that they could look at? And Indian law it runs deep, and it's American law, and so they could look a lot to the different constitutions, different treaties that are still in effect today. So there's a lot in depth they can go in high school.
Well, are there different laws on different reservations? They have sort of a local jurisdiction?
Yep, absolutely. So each tribe has their own constitution, and they're under federal jurisdiction, and so they're exempt in a way from state jurisdiction. But there are some more avenues for, they call it cross jurisdiction, where they might work with the state in different avenues. But the laws itself become really unique to study. For example, the bison restoration, taking the genetically pure bison from Yellowstone to Fort Peck when they first made the movement. That was a great example of federal laws as opposed to state laws.
Tell me about that. I'm not clear on that.
So, and oh gosh, I can't remember the year off the top of my head, but there was a movement to make sure, because a lot of the the bison ranches on the tribes, on the reservations, aren't necessarily genetically pure. They've been crossbred with cattle, especially as they were near extermination. And so the movement was to have the genetically pure bison herd from Yellowstone moving more into the reservations so that they could be closer to the indigenous people where there's a strong connection. And so they were able to bring a portion of that herd up to Fort Peck. And since then it's grown to more reservations. So they now have a genetically pure selection of bison up on the different reservations to be accessible for the tribal groups.
Well, is that the idea then, is to continue growing these herds?
It could be, yeah.
Are there herds on every reservation?
You know, I'm
or just
not
a
sure.
few?
That would be one to research, and I know we've got some different lessons that are really digging into those, so that would be something to research as well.
Now, you mentioned grant money. You are funded by the state and by grants?
Yep.
And by federal grants, I'm assuming.
Federal grant, yep. So we have the first avenue of funding is our Indian Education for All, which is truly educating everyone about Montana Indigenous tribal groups. Our second avenue of funding is state funding to look at closing the achievement gap that exists between our Indigenous students and non-Native students, and hoping to increase the graduation rate for our urban Indigenous students. And then the third is our Title VI grant, and that one is specifically looking at supporting our Indigenous students in our community, as we're the ones who've received the grant, and providing cultural enrichment, a sense of increasing the graduation rate, decreasing the dropout rate, increasing attendance, all the different factors that play into important avenues of education and protective factors to keep them safe.
Well, what would be some challenges that would be unique to an Indigenous student? What do they struggle with?
Well, a lot of the struggles could be just recognizing a sense of belonging, especially if they didn't grow up in our urban area, to say, I do belong in this community. And so even though I might go back to the reservation for different cultural ceremonies, but I belong here, my family's here, this is where my school is, and we know that. It's so important for a student to recognize that they belong in the community, for all students, not only our Indigenous students.
Right. Well then, tell me about a transition, say, from an educational facility, a school, on a reservation into a non-reservation school. Is that quite a bridge?
Well, it's very similar to any other school. That would be really similar. The transition itself isn't necessarily with academic records or the educational experience itself. It's more of a change from where you might be living. We know across Montana that Billings is not the same as Kalispell, and so
No, right.
true with our small communities. It's just kind of might be a shock to move into such a large urban location if they're not familiar. But some of our Indigenous students do come from different cities, and some have grown up here too. So no matter if you're coming from a reservation school, another urban location, or Billings itself, just recognizing this is your community. You
Right.
belong here.
Okay. Well, now, are there special resources available to Indigenous students if they're struggling?
So probably our biggest resource is our personnel. We've got our Indian education home to school coordinators, and they provide cultural enrichment, mentoring, and those types of supports to students.
So this is one-on-one?
Yep, it could be one-on-one.
Wow.
It could be in small groups. Yep, it could be. And then we also support some of the mentoring at the high school, not necessarily our staff, but the high school teachers to provide more mentoring to students, and lots of training to teachers. The Indian Education for All training also provides a great avenue for the training that's needed for closing the achievement gap as well.
Do you imagine some of these students might be inspired to go on and teach?
Oh, absolutely.
Given the opportunities that your department provides them.
Yep, absolutely. We have such a rich group of students in Billings Public Schools. It's really exciting to see where they're all taking off and going from here.
Now, what about getting into college? What's the rate of that senior who gets out of high school and wants to move on?
And being newer to this position, that's one of the data pieces I'm still digging into.
Okay.
And we're working on that as well as, and that fits in with our district goals as well, becoming college, career, military ready. And so we're continuing to work and grow as not only as a department, but as a district to provide students those opportunities.
Right. I remember Dr. Garcia mentioning that across the board, getting everybody ready and getting everybody included.
Yep.
So how do you see the department changing or evolving?
We're having a lot of push from federal and state level, but even knowing at a local level and intrinsically that we need more cultural enrichment. So we're really pushing for that as it's such a critical protective factor for a sense of belonging in a community and for individuals. And we know just it's so important for kids to recognize that their culture is with them no matter where they're at. They're always with them. And then when we provide cultural presentations, it is a great avenue for all students to have that education about our Indian Education for All.
Yeah, and why it's important. Well, you mentioned the long hair on the little boy, and there was something in the news last month about, it was in another state, but a little Native boy was forced to cut his hair. And there's a lawsuit about it because it's his religion.
Something I recently learned with our veterans presentations is just recently the military has allowed for cultural exemptions for men and women to leave their hair long and not have the traditional
the buzz
short,
cut.
the traditional cut. So
Really?
it's really becoming pretty fascinating to see the amount of education across the nation. Yes.
Right.
So, yep, that is definitely something that we've been working to provide more awareness. And I can see that more in the community where more and more students, male students and female students are recognizing the significance of hair and having long hair. It's obviously not a requirement for our culture, but it's a definite component for some people. And, that's one of the things we talk about with Indian Ed for All is recognizing that there are tribal differences in the reservations for sure, tribal differences, band and clan differences, family differences, and individual differences. Not everybody is the same. There's not a generic American Indian, but we do know that there's more of an increase of males growing their hair out. My son's one of them. He decided in 3rd grade to grow his hair out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mom, this is what we're doing.
Yep. Yeah. For sure.
Now, I wanted to ask you about the summer time when the students are not in class. Is there a mechanism to keep them sort of engaged until the next fall?
We do have summer programs. So coming into the department, there was some programs established already. We've got some great teachers and staff on board that have, one of them being High School 101. So it's a program that helps 8th graders going into high school, our Indigenous students. So they come in and they have some different cultural speakers, looking at avenues to monitor their own academic performance and just stay successful as they make that transition. We also have an elementary academy Academy, Indigenous Academy. Lots of speakers and activities. We built some smudge boxes. We did some field trips to Plentycoo and just different places to allow the students that opportunity to have a good summer outside experience learning about their culture. And then this year we added on Middle School 101. We had a great teacher to head that up where it was supporting fifth graders coming into sixth grade. It's very similar to the High School 101 mini-year version.
Right.
Lots of locker practice, but the same thing of looking at culture and how that's important in middle school. Middle school's a tough time, lots of developmental things going on, and so we want to provide you lots of
Nobody
support.
likes middle school. Nobody.
And then we also just started our Indigenous language program in the summer too.
Really?
So this year we had great success. We had a teacher that had the avenue for teaching Nakona, Assiniboine, and then we also were able to find an Apsalaka, a Crow teacher, and provide language. And we're hoping that will grow. Through just some conversations, we found out we have at least 4 teachers within the district that can teach the language. Some are certified through the state to teach their language.
Really?
And so we're hoping to just provide them a great avenue to teach our students language. We know we've found out over and over with research and even my own personal experience that when you learn your Indigenous language and culture just comes with it and a lot of traditional learnings, and it's really important whether or not you become fluent or you just have that exposure. It's just a really good avenue for learning. So this past summer was middle school, and hopefully in future summers we'll expand that program out.
So these summer programs, is this an everyday program all summer long?
It's chunks. So some might be the middle school's the shortest one, only 3 days.
Okay.
And then the high school 101's long enough that they could receive half a credit. The middle school, depending on teacher availability. And so we just might allow what's available at that time.
So a student entering Billings Public Schools, an Indigenous student, would they be made aware, or their parents be made aware when they enter the district what's available to them?
We try to catch them. We do. We try and reach out as soon as we can. Sometimes
It's a big population?
Yeah, sometimes we might miss some students, and hopefully they can have some access through their. Most of the schools have a link to our Indigenous Department webpage or some other resources. If they're at a middle school or high school, they have one of our home to school coordinators stationed there, so they can usually find their office. But we try to put as much of the word out as possible.
So tell me about the success rate.
Well, and again, this being my second year, we're still looking at that. We've noticed success rates with lots of our programs. We gauge a lot by activity with our family nights, and then hopefully we'll continue to gain with summer programs. But looking at our achievement data is something that we will constantly be watching and looking at.
Right. So we have pulled up the web page here, and if you want more information, all I did is I typed in School District 2 Indian Education and found, and then there are more pockets as you go deeper. So if people do want more information, Calli, what would you advise they do?
Oh, yep. Our website, on our website, it has our email address, our phone numbers. They're welcome to give us a call, send us an email, even drop by one of the offices.
Well, I think you should call ahead to make sure Calli's in the office because I haven't been that lucky.
Yep,
All right. Anything we missed?
I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.